Hey, MetYA. I am here with Jen Pollock Michel, and we're going to have a little conversation here. Thank you, Jen, so much for taking a little bit of time to chat with me. And our goal is going to be just to talk a little bit about women and their involvement and opportunity and necessity for women to be in ministry and to train in ministry. And Jen, thank you so much once again. I'd love for you just to start off by maybe introducing yourself, a little bit about yourself, your family, and your current ministry involvement. Where do you live, and how you guys have been holding up during COVID-19?
Yeah, well, it's fun to be able to finally chat after connecting a little bit digitally. But my family and I live in Toronto, and I have 5 kids. One of them was at McGill, actually, when COVID hit. So she was home finishing her year online. And then we have a son who actually was just graduating from high school when all of this hit as well.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, that was really hard. We have a daughter who just finished grade 10, and then we have twin boys who just finished grade 6. So yeah, 5 kids, and we're thankful to just kind of have the space and get along. We get along pretty well. So it's, although I'm sure the teenagers are like, why do I have to be with my parents for 5 months straight? But
Yeah.
we moved to Toronto in 2011, and that's when I started, thinking more about personal writing. I had done a lot of devotional writing
Hmm.
before that. Previous to that, in 2004, I started writing devotionals for Moody Bible Institute for their devotional publication called Today in the Word.
Hmm.
And that just kind of started, actually, truthfully, because I was friends with an editor, and I had English training in my background. So I was doing some part-time editing for them just on a contract basis when they needed some extra help.
Hmm.
They said, why don't you think about writing for us? So I started writing for them in 2004. And I did that up until like just a couple of years ago. But when we moved to Toronto in 2011, I just felt like God was calling me to write more personally. And that was actually because I was working on an issue at the time for Today in the Word on the fear of the Lord, and thinking
Hmm.
about Israel's story and how often they were led into fear of other kinds, fear of other nations, fear of obstacles, because they couldn't remember they never remembered, the story
Hmm.
of God's deliverance for them.
Hmm.
And so as I was writing about that, Psalm 78, I really just felt like God was calling me to write more personally. We'd moved to Toronto, and I wanted to just pay attention to what God was doing in our life and in our family's life. And, I wouldn't have said at that point that God, was calling me to write books and to go speak about those books. I think so often with calling, we obey just one teeny little step. We don't really know where it's leading, but for me, it was like, write more personally, start a blog. And so I did that. And then kind of the books just sort of emerged out of that practice of personal writing. And so my first book was published in 2014. And then I've had 2 books published since then, and another book coming out next year. I'm working on a 5th book. So that's kind of the ministry that I'm doing right now.
That's so exciting, and I mean, I've been so appreciative of your ministry from afar. My wife is a fan of yours, and she's been helped by a number of your books. And I think the one that she read most intentionally was your one on desire,
Mm.
and I know she was helped by that, and many more have been. And I was confident that we'd be fast friends, knowing that you were a coffee lover and a bookworm. And
Exactly.
I
Those
just
usually go hand in hand.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Some people like tea. I don't get that, but
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
I was just watching the J.I. Packer's little book about, from his own words that they released, Crossway released, and he was
Mm.
talking about the legacy that he wants to leave is people reading. So
Mm.
I think it's pretty cool that you're contributing to his legacy and many other legacies.
Mm.
That Christianity is a religion of the book.
Yeah.
And as we produce books, that they would point helpfully to the book, that we might
Mm.
be people of the book. Well, that's really exciting, Jen, and we will be upholding you in prayer here at MetYA here in Ottawa, and
Thank
thinking
you.
fondly of you as you continue to work on those projects. So how could you share a little bit? I know you talked just then about, you know, that spark, that original spark about personal writing, but how did you process, you know, your own personal calling into that aspect of ministry, and what
Mm.
factors maybe played into that?
In earlier in my kind of younger married life, I was doing a lot of lay ministry. I was doing just, you know, leading a lot of Bible studies, doing a lot of actually evangelistic Bible studies. And I really at that point thought that I would be going back for a ministry degree. And
Mhm.
so we had 3 young kids at the time. I tell this story in Teachers to One. 3 young kids at the time. And I thought, okay, and I have a master's in literature. I used to teach high school French and English. So I have a master's in literature, and that has been super helpful actually
Mhm.
in doing just kind of my own sort of guided biblical study. But I do have an interest in language, and there's a biblical exegesis program at Wheaton, and we were living in the Chicago area at the time. And I had talked to several friends of friends who had done the program. And I just thought, okay, this is just would be a great degree to have.
Mhm.
And so I actually was in the office with a professor talking about starting that degree. And it really, I wouldn't say at the time that I knew what I was even going to do with it. You know, it was just more like I have a desire to really study the Bible, to communicate the truths of the scripture well to people. And that just seemed like a valuable thing to me. And here I was,
Mhm.
like basically next door to Wheaton College. So why not, you know? And so I kind of imagined like my 3 kids getting off to school, and then I knew I'd have to have some language prerequisites. And then like a month later, I found out I was pregnant. And then 2 months later, I found out I was pregnant with twins. I was
Oh
like, my
my
life is
gosh.
over. I am never going to get that degree. And there actually was like, and of course, like that was preemptive, you know, presumptuous to even sort of say at the time. Um, but I think in a way, I wondered if God was foreclosing on some of my ministry desires, just because I had a lot of family responsibilities. You know, I was going to have 5 kids, 7 and younger. And I didn't
That's
know
wild.
I didn't know like where God was how would I squeeze out any time for ministry? And so that was sort of shelved for a while. And when we moved to Toronto, I felt like God was just kind of shifting what I had already been doing. I'd already
Mhm.
been doing lots of lay ministry and leading Bible studies, but shifting it to writing. Um,
Mhm.
and you know, again, it's just sort of like been very incremental. And in a way, like I don't have this kind of epiphany where I look back and I say, God called me into ministry. And, you know, here's the day that I, you know, realized that. And I think that's actually a real challenge for women,
Mhm.
especially in a complementarian context. You don't have a lot of people affirming those desires and those
Yeah.
curiosities. I mean,
Yeah.
in some ways, when I look back and I think about all that I did in terms of just serving in the church, it seems kind of obvious that, you know, at some point, someone probably should have said to me, you know, you'd really benefit from a theological degree. But I never once had a pastor say that to me.
Yeah.
And that's a real grief to me. And actually, I was even sharing that with my pastor recently, that, you know, he was like, what do you want to do? You know, we will send you to seminary. And I mean, it's always in the back of my mind, like, and I don't know that won't be in my future. But at this point, I'm 46 and kind of feeling like I'm not sure if that's ahead for me. But I'm thankful for where I am now. I'm thankful for my Wheaton degree. I have to say that, you know, to have, you know,
You and me both. You and me both.
oh my goodness, you know, but yeah, those are some of the griefs I think I have, you know, that there's not that kind of clear moment of this is the way, walk in it. And I think that I've had to seek more affirmation than it's been given to me
Yeah.
readily. And I don't think that's because you know, I wasn't serving in the church. I was, you know, and I think people would even say I was serving out of gifts that God had given me. but there's just not that clear path for women. Like, okay, if pastors had encouraged me to get a theological degree, like to what end, maybe would have been their question.
Yeah, that's something we wrestle with. You know, we have, and Jen, you were so gracious to endorse our internship program, and we were so glad and eager to equip women with the tools necessary to do word ministry. But that question does come up, you know, to what end? And because it is a serious thing to invest years,
Yes. Yes.
and in many instances finances,
That's right,
to get those tools. And so we thought, you know, in the context of the local church, let's give some of those tools. We'll get people started on the road to seminary, but we won't get them the full deal or something, so they can get a taste of what that's like.
yes.
I do wonder if you have some thoughts within a complementarian context, briefly, about how women are so necessary in vocational ministry, whether it be writing or within the local church in the appropriate context, or what ends might receiving theological training lead. What ends might it lead women who do such a thing, and how might some of the YAs here at the Met discern how to move forward in that direction?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've just noticed in my own context is that when women open the word, they do it with a set of questions that may be slightly different. They do it with curiosities that are enlivened by their embodied experience. And that is critical. You know, I mean, when we go to the text, we are always sort of, you know, our inquiry is guided by our own set of questions, you know? And so the fact that and here would be an example, like, because I've heard this passage preached so many times, and I can't wait to actually hear a woman teach on it. I've never actually heard a woman teach on the story of Mary and Martha. Okay. And I think it's so, for example, I think a man approaches that text and it's just so easy to kind of think about, you know, Mary, you know, and Jesus commends Mary. So she does the right thing. And I don't want to defend Martha, but I think as a woman who's been very active in opening up my home, expressing hospitality, like the actual practicalities of having somebody in your house. There's a table that has to be set, dishes that have to be thought, like a menu that has to be planned, you know, groceries that have to be bought. I mean, those practicalities are front and center for me when I go to a text and I think about this dinner that they're hosting for Jesus. And when Jesus says to Mary, you know, it's great that you're sitting at my feet, and says to Martha, you know, you got to choose the better portion. All of that I understand, but what I want somebody to also talk about is okay, but Martha was doing, like, she had some practicalities that were important too, that she was thinking of. And so often I think there's this binary approach to Mary did the right thing, Martha did the wrong thing. And so that would just be an example of, like, I come to that text with a different kind of experience. Not that men don't cook, not that men don't open their homes. Like, men do that too, and they're called to do that from the scriptures. But just as, at least in my house, I'm the one that engages or is charged more with the practical pieces of hospitality. So why is it important that women open the scriptures? Because their questions are going to be different. Their curiosity, I'm not saying, you know, this is a generalization. There are certainly shared curiosities that we have. But if we want to say that our embodied experience is important, well, it's going to be different. And I can just see that whenever I've had the opportunity to open the scriptures for women, like, they just are so appreciative, first of all, to see a woman standing before them taking the scriptures seriously, you know, and asking maybe the questions that they may be thinking to ask, or knowing how to apply the scriptures in ways that, you know, are very particular to their life experience. I feel that way whenever I've been able to sit under the teaching of other women in my church who are amazing, who do it way better than I do. Wendy Stringer is one of our directors of discipleship. And when that woman opens the scripture, I just feel cut to the heart. And there's just something so powerful to see her standing up as a woman. So those are some of the things I would say about why should women pursue theological education? Why is this, why does it matter that they're in ministry? It matters so much for the women in the church to just see somebody standing, and the same is true for, I mean, as we even think about kind of the conversation around race, you know, that we want to see people who feel representative of us, whose experiences we can relate to. That doesn't make you a powerful Bible teacher. It's not that my experience doesn't equip me to teach the scriptures, but it certainly helps me in the translation of their truths, if that makes sense.
Hey, that's wonderful. Yeah, and I appreciate so much about that. I've loved, we have a full-time female intern on staff this year, and I've just so cherished working with her and seeing her learn to handle the scriptures within our women's ministry and our outreach ministry. And it's just been a joy to have a little bit of a hand in seeing the cause of women in ministry flourish. And we intend to do so, and it's just been so great to hear from you. I wish we could keep talking.
I know.
I wish we could keep connecting, but Lord willing, you know, as Paul says to both the Corinthians and to Philemon, maybe God will open up a door for us to cross paths sometime. And
that'd be great.
We'll pray to that end. But thank you so much, Jen, for taking some time to bless the YAs here at the Met.
Yeah, thanks so much for the conversation.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much.